So welcome to another war game review from theplayersaid.com. My name's Alexander.
And I'm Grant.
And today we're taking a look at Burning Banners, Rage of the Witch Queen. I think I got that right.
Yeah, I think you did.
That was a bit of a tongue twister from Compass Games. So this is part of their Golden Age collection, which is a new kind of line that Compass is kind of coming out with some different eclectic games.
So I have heard the next game in the series is that Engine Thieves game from Wes Crawford.
Ah, yes.
Do you remember that? Solitaire, ACW.
Which is nothing like this.
No, and that's what, it's nothing like this.
But I think it's going to be an interesting line of kind of
unique
fun
games.
And enjoyable and unique games that aren't necessarily the most hardcore, right?
Right. This is a really beer and pretzel style of war game because it's just fun. Right? It's just fun, and you're just playing, and you're checking a bunch of dice, and you're playing some cool cards, and it's just fun.
Yeah, so this is a hex and counter fantasy war game, and it's designed by Chris Moller, who did all the artwork for it as well, especially with the board and the illustrations on the counters and stuff.
Absolutely stunningly beautiful art.
And kind of overall, extremely well-produced game.
Yeah.
I think Compass really took a massive step up on this production-wise. You have these recessed boards.
Pre-rounded counters.
The artwork, these are mounted maps. There's 4 of them. I think they're the 22 by 17
dual-sided as well?
No, they're not.
They're not, okay.
But I think they lay out in a certain way, but you don't use all of them. And the cards are linen finished, and there's a lot of them. Yeah, all the counters pre-rounded.
Nice chunky dice.
And a lot of them.
They
didn't cheap out on those. It's a really, really good production. Indeed, we've had this game, gosh, when did we get it?
Well, I got it off of the Kickstarter, so...
Was that last year?
No, it's a 2024. So it came out early in the year, like January, February-ish.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because we played this 4-player for the first time at Buckeye Game Fest.
And that was the 1st of May.
Yeah, at the time of recording, it was about 4 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. when you're watching this,
who knows?
Who knows when that'll be? But it should be that this is having a second print run. And that's something that's available to you, because I think it's sold out very quickly for them. Mm-hmm. And having played this a few times now, understandably so. Like you said, this is a beer and pretzels game. It's light. The actual rules themselves are really easy. You buy your fantasy guys, you move throughout the land, you chuck dice, and a bunch of them die. Right? There's these cards which are for your magic users to cast these really big spells. And
it's just things like little abilities here, or an extra dice here or there, or your enemy loses a dice,
or a free little strike.
Yeah,
they're really neat. It's
cards.
Fun, but it doesn't take itself too seriously. It's not one of those games that looks nice, but then has a crazy rule book in it that's super hard. The rules are very easy to play, even the advanced rules.
Yeah.
I would never play without them.
Well, and really the advanced rules focus on, I think it's the heroes.
They add the heroes, they add the spells, and the monsters.
I have no idea why you would play
That's the best parts of the game.
Without it. I guess I would play the game without it just the first time, just to
maybe if you were playing with your kids?
Sure. But there's nothing overly complex here that you shouldn't just throw in: the heroes, the spells, the treasures, the monsters.
Because if you played any games, period, you want to play with all that stuff because it just adds more without being burdensome. The reality is it does not slow you down. Those things don't do anything crazy complicated. It's just, here's some magic spells, and they have a range on them.
And they just add to the game. They deepen it. They make it better.
Yes, because it's a fantasy game. I want the magic. I want the monsters. I want the spells. That's all. That's the extra fun, cool stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
And frankly, I mean, once again, this is our second time playing it, and I would slap this thing down again.
Oh yeah.
And I would go again. But to me, one of the most unique parts about it is all the different asymmetric factions. They are all very, very different.
And I think there's 6.
There are 6 of them. There are a couple that are similar, like the orcs and the goblins. They're called the
Shashka
Kingdom. they're similar in that they're rage monkeys that are just all out assault after assault after. That's what you're trying to do. You're not building a kingdom.
They're destroying
a kingdom
and looting it,
burning themselves out. But then you've got the Fjordlanders, Vikings.
Yeah, these are a bit more traditional.
Yeah.
But then there's the Eastern Kingdoms or Eastern Empire.
Yep.
Those guys are really strong and powerful.
But they have revolts.
They have this revolt track, and they have to keep that down.
They have to pay their money to kind of bribe people to
It's the price you pay for civilization.
And then there's the Army of the Night, which is kind of like your vampires, your werewolves, your vampire bats. And
they're that kind of traditional faction. They start in the Castlevania, out in the middle of nowhere, and they send out their rats and their bats, and they spread like the plague. And then there's the dwarves who sit in the mountains.
Live in the mountains.
Yeah. They're good at fighting, especially where they're good at in the mountains. Yeah. But they're also going out digging for gold, and they have their own little economy as well.
But it's unique that I think Chris and the team put that much effort into developing, and not only the different races, the different cultures, and their different unique abilities, but there's a huge full backstory.
Oh yeah,
here.
There's a full booklet of the story of this, and there's a number of campaigns.
Yep.
In which is a bunch of scenarios.
I would say there's 14 of them, or maybe it's.
I think there's 3 or 4 campaigns, and in each one I think there's
4 or 5,
6 missions in them.
Yeah.
And each of those campaigns has its own kind of arc in it, and you'll play different scenarios at different player counts for them, and you can do lots of, or you can just kind of pick one and do it as a standalone, depending on what. But they put in a lot of that story into it as well, if that's what you like.
And I always feel like that's one of the unique hallmarks, or should be a unique hallmark, of a fantasy-style war game. Because when we play these war games, it's East Front, which was a historical event, right? It's West Front, it's a historical event. It's Korean War, it's Vietnam War. So they have the historical roots in the background.
Yeah, the narrative is there.
Here, to me, in order for these fantasy war games to be good, they've got to have a believable, somewhat, realistic, how many giants are running, but something that makes sense.
You want the lore of it to be.
Yeah, or even the motivation. What are we trying to do? What are the orcs and the goblins? What are they doing differently than the Army of the Night and the Eastern guys that are the kingdom? It's got to be believable, or to me, it just becomes an exercise in pushing pieces around.
That's really interesting, because I think when it comes to fantasy stuff, as long as the different factions play uniquely in a way that makes sense, I don't know if I care about the actual story lore part of it.
Yeah.
But when I play goblins versus dwarfs, I want the goblins to do goblin-y things, and the dwarfs to do dwarfy things. I don't think I care why they're fighting.
No,
but there is all that. That story is there.
Right, but I think what you are saying is exactly what I'm trying to say, is the concept of, here's a race, here's what they're doing, what they're trying to do, and here's how they do it.
Yeah,
and it's got to make sense. I think of some of the games that we played that I would consider fantasy-style war games, Wizard Kings.
Right.
Right?
Yes.
Doesn't have a great, full, in-depth background or backstory, but there are different races with different abilities, different blocks and units.
But to me, in that game, having not read the lore, if there is any, Wizard Kings is
didn't matter as much.
It's my faction against your faction, and there's some asymmetry, right? This one, there's a bit more to it on the surface.
But I think that's the nail on the head.
Yeah.
To me, a Wizard Kings, while a great game,
it's fun.
It's very one-dimensional. This, to me, is a fully developed 3D integrated concept that works well together. I find that unique. I also find it unique that he did the campaigns.
Yes.
Where you're kind of doing different scenarios leading up. I just think that's unique and cool, because it's something that mimics historical games, but makes it a light, fun, dice chucking.
Yeah, so speaking of Wizard Kings, that's a game where you've got your plebs running around fighting, and you've got your magic user who's doing your massive cool spells, right?
You have
the
that
way
here.
it functions here is different, but it's that same feel, right? I've got my guys running around. You have your heroes, most of which are mages, and they're the ones who can cast the spell. So they have range considerations. You want to make sure you stack them with good stacks, because some of your spells will be like army stacked with magic user gets to double their dice, that kind of stuff. So you're playing off of what your spells are.
Yep.
But your spells come from a generic spell deck that everyone draws from.
Which is a cool aspect, I think.
Yeah, but so what that means is you might get some spells that you're not set up for, and you've got to kind of shuffle some guys around to make use of those.
Yeah.
Which I think is really neat as well. Instead of, I think in Wizard Kings, it's like you've got your menu of stuff, that's what that guy is, and that's what you're charging up to do.
Yeah.
It's a little bit different, but it's that same... the feel of it, having the plebs, then having the magic users, and you can have a few of them out, and that's really neat as well. You have a very limited set of spells, so most of that is, that's going to be where you put those out on the board, but having multiple spellcasters is very strong.
Well, and in addition to their spell casting abilities, some of them just have different abilities.
Yeah, like good unique abilities.
Like I know one of my guys was basically a big troll, that when you used his ability, he functioned as a siege tower and was able
Which is pretty cool.
Oh, it's very cool. But it was able to kind of nullify your advantage for your different
for the fortifications,
strongholds. I just think that's unique. Your Thor guy, didn't he add a die when he was adjacent to the sea space?
Yeah, he converted a die. He increased one.
A white to a black.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If he's near the ocean.
And that's not going to happen a whole lot, right? Because most of the fighting's kind of inland here. But
my guys
there will be some of that.
My guys were kind of in this territory, and I think they do. There's a lot of that in this game. Like the dwarf guys sit in the mountains. They don't have territories out in the ocean. Why would they? And they don't. And so we played this 4-player at WBC, and that was really interesting to see.
It was.
The Eastern Empire had this big old empire spreads over lots of different things. They got a lot of stuff to maintain, a lot of stuff to hold, but they have a lot of money to do it.
Yeah.
Kind of,
they're the empire.
Bit of jack of all trades as well. Whereas, the orcs and the goblins don't have any land. They don't start with anything. They start with a line of guys on one side of the board, and they have to rush and burn everything as far as they can go.
Yep.
The army of the night sit in a little castle, and you set up. It's kind of like wherever you want to. You just pick a vacant neutral space, and that's where you go.
Yep.
And
you picked, I remember when we were playing 4-player, you picked way away from me, out in the middle of nowhere.
Well, I was trying to take them up here,
sure.
and then we would meet and crush the guys in the middle. It did not work.
It did not work.
I died very quickly.
I think all your guys what mimicked what happened to me tonight.
It was very bad. I desperately want to play them again, because I was very bad. They were unique. I learned a lot of lessons. But the dwarves are just in the mountains, and there's a whole mountain board, and that's where they kind of sit and play geographically. It's a neat way of doing factions in this game.
But I mean, this feels like a war game, right? It's a war game. It's just a non-historical fantasy setting war game. It has a lot of the same mechanics, terrain modifiers, adding dice. It's a lot of dice. It's a dice chucker. You're rolling 3 to 5 dice for each attack. There are no zones of control, right? So that
that's just it. This is not a complex war game. It's not that kind of game.
And I wanted to bring that up because don't think that it's going to be like that.
Yeah, you're going to count your movement points through terrains.
Yeah.
You're going to chuck some dice, and people are going to die.
Yeah.
That's really what we're doing here.
Yep.
It's not as the crunch. You can't combine attacks and do a bunch of stuff. We're not doing any of that. You just attack down the line. And
well, I think when we first played at Buckeye Game Fest and I was the orcs, I was trying to do what I normally would do.
Yeah. Set of planking stuff.
I would get where I had 3 or 4 units attacking one unit in a hex, and I'm like, I attack all separately. So ultimately, you are attacking all together. But
they're individual attacks,
and that can make a huge difference. Because the defender gets to roll die and hits cancel each other out, which I think is actually a magnificent way of doing it.
It's very clean in this
very
system
clean,
too.
But it's also fun because of the exploding dice concept, the critical hit. You roll a 7 or an 8.
Yes.
On a D8, that's an exploding. You get to roll a D6 to confirm it, and you'll do 2 hits.
Yes. Okay.
Right.
So there are D8s and there are D6s, and you literally on the counter it says you have 2 white and a black. So you have 2 white and a black. 5s and 6s on all these dice hit. 5, 6, 7, 8 hits on this. And so only the black dice can have those criticals, the D8s. But you throw another D6 and hope for another 5 or 6. And you'll be surprised at how many times you do it.
Or how many times you miss.
Well, yeah. You'll get the crits. You won't confirm any of them, that's for sure.
I think I didn't confirm most of mine tonight.
And it's a really simple system from that. And that's why I think this is one of those games that anyone can learn.
Yeah.
Like, it is not complicated at all.
While it is a war game, this is a very simple, low-complexity war game.
Yeah.
I think once you get the rules down, and we made that comment, after playing it now the second time, that was much easier, right? We understood the concepts a little better, we got the spells correct, all of that worked together better our second play, which is typically the way it is. You always play a game better the second time, but anybody can learn this. And I think that a lot of different people are going to be attracted to this.
Yeah, that was the other interesting part of this is, we played it 4-player, we played it 2-player, and the pace of the 2-player game is much stronger. It's much quicker.
I felt a lot more downtime when we did 4-player. A lot more.
Because the reality is in a 4-player game, you're going to take your turn, and you'll do a lot of stuff on your turn.
Yep.
And then on one of the other players' turns, you might get attacked a few times.
Yeah, 2 or 3 times, and you're going to sit there.
You're going to sit there for,
20 minutes.
Twice as long as you acted for, and it was slow.
Yep.
I still enjoyed myself.
No, I did enjoy it, but I would say I think I enjoyed better the 2-player game.
Yeah, I would definitely do 3 because I think that's still enough.
I still would like to do.
I would still
5
do
or 6.
I still would just to do it, but but there's really not a way to fix that or speed it up. Where we're doing stuff and you're doing stuff up there.
Yeah.
There's not really, sometimes like in a chip pull, we can pull some chits down here. You can put some chills up there. Because this one, I don't know, there's not really a conducive way to do that.
Yeah.
But 2-player, it was really fast, it was snappy, it was pacey, and it was excellent. Out of the 9 possible turns you can have, it is like the longest like a scenario can be. This was a 6-turner, and it just felt like I was doing stuff all the time.
Right.
And that was really, really good.
Well, and like you said, every round you were attacking me, whether it was my turn or not.
Yep.
So I had gone and attacked you. We each were rolling dice, playing cards, because you have that response style of card. They're called cantrips.
Yep.
And some of those you can play in response to an attack or during an attack or even interrupt an attack. But it kept you engaged, particularly with the 2 players, way more than when we played with the 4, but it was still fun. I mean, it's both ways are good.
I still really enjoyed it, but I think that's the note is that if you don't like a lot of downtime, there is, especially in those bigger games, which is a little bit of a bummer because I really want to play the 6-player with a lot of people because you have 4 maps, it's huge, everyone's doing everything, but I think in that instance, just know it's going to be a leisurely game.
Yeah.
Right? That's what it's for.
Yeah. Well, and it's that style of light game too, so if it takes you a couple of hours, it's okay. It's just enjoy the experience, right?
Yes.
Get into it, read your guys, read the lore book, and it's fun.
This is putting the beer into beer and pretzels because you will have time to do that.
Yes.
Definitely. I think with max players, it's a leisurely game.
Yeah.
Whereas when it's us, you can get through it if that's what you're on a time crunch and you just want to do something that's fun and engaging.
Yeah.
And then it's over with. You can do that at 2 players as well.
One other comment I want to make, because I brought up the fantasy war game genre, and we've played a couple. Have you played Titan?
Yeah. We played Titan.
So this reminded me in some ways of Titan, and I'm talking the old Avalon Hill 1970.
Massive stacks of guys moving around on that crazy board.
But you get on a little battle board that, to me, kind of mimics this normal game board, although it's not as restrictive, right? This is a little more open, but you're still getting in there. You're trying to get into different terrain. You're trying to take advantage of a defensive position. And I really liked that about this because it made where I was on the board important enough that I needed to focus on that and think about that. And a couple of times I made a mistake and I had a guy out in the middle of nowhere and it's like, oh, all of a sudden he's just rolling 2 dice when he could have been rolling a 3rd.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed that because to me that married the war game genre with this and just made it work together, and I thought that was fun.
Well, one thing that a lot of people said, especially when we were playing this at Buckeye Game Fest, was like, "Oh, it looks a lot like Magic Quest,"
which we've never played.
Don't ask because we've not played it.
Yeah.
However, it is being, and at the time it was like on Kickstarter. Worthington's redoing that.
Oh, Divine Right.
Divine Right. That's
Divine
what it's
Right.
called. Magic Quest. I have
is another game.
Yes, which I have.
We've not played.
No, I have Magic Realm. That's
Magic
what it is.
Realm.
Divine. Is it called Divine Right?
I think it's Divine Right.
That's
that
the
was
one
on
that I'm talking
Kickstarter about 3 or 4 months ago.
Yeah.
It probably will be fulfilling at the end of the year, would be my guess.
I don't know mechanically how similar these are, but it's that same. I think it's this size and it's hexes and it's fantasy. So people are like, oh, it looks the same. The artwork's very different. This is very detailed. I think that one has a more kind of retro look to it.
Sure.
Which is neat in of itself. So don't ask because I don't know. But I hope we get to that and play that as well. And
I
put
think
a fantasy war game list together would be fun.
I think you had made the comment, one of our friends at WBC will have a copy of probably the older version of Divine Right. Didn't he say he was bringing that? Because the new one's not out yet that I'm aware of.
He may have done.
Okay.
I have a bad memory.
That's fine.
So if that happened, it could
I think
be.
he did say it, but we'll see.
That'd be fun.
You're right. One day, we've played enough of these and I would throw like War of the Ring in here as a fantasy style of war game.
I'd even put something like Mage Knight.
Oh, I love Mage Knight.
Because Mage Knight...
Mage Knight feels a lot like this because of the
monsters and the spells of very
much.
Mage Knight. That's more of a racing game.
Well, and it's a deck builder, too. You're building a deck.
But
I love that game.
It's very good.
We have not played that for years.
Terrible rulebook.
Well, isn't it a Polish
It's
game?
a translation.
Yeah.
But it's 3 columns, tiny print.
I remember
dense,
that.
And it's bad. But yeah, really fun game. I get a lot of the feeling and the stuff that I liked in that game where you're like, ooh, I want to delve into the cave. What's in the cave? It's a monster. What kind of monster is it? I fight the monster.
Yeah.
I didn't, and then the monster kills me.
Yeah.
Again,
they're pretty powerful.
It's a bit more streamlined in this.
Sure.
That game's very complex. But I think the way that they've done that,
look at that guy,
incorporated those elements into it are really fun.
Oh,
and you get incredible rewards.
Yep.
You kill the monsters, you get like 6 gold, and you draw a treasure card, and the treasure card are like additional spell-like effects.
Colossal worm.
Yeah, and he freaking ambushes you.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to kill you before you even get to do anything. The magic items are really cool.
Yes.
I didn't get a lot of them this game, but I did get a lot last game, and they are very unique. And they're not all one shots. Some of them I think are one shots.
Well, you play it down, and then you can
refresh
through
it.
the magic.
Yeah.
But
I had the wizard staff, which allowed me to draw an extra spell. It was pretty
we have
good.
Like a cursed item last time that got passed around a couple people?
Maybe
there was. I don't know if it was cursed, but there was something that I was given by someone else.
We might be confusing that with Gloomhaven.
No.
Okay,
it was definitely
rock.
it was no. That's definitely it. No, there was something in that game. That got
maybe there
passed
was.
to me.
I just
like,
don't remember. Well, we could. Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot. Like again, the rules are really easy to learn, but there's so much variety in the spells and the treasures and the monsters and the factions that it's a really enjoyable game, and it's rich without being bogged down and complex.
Right.
And that is a huge credit to this game.
Well, yeah, the systems actually used are fairly simple, but they just work.
Yes.
And this combat system is very, very similar to what he used in Brother Against Brother, 1862, I think it was, that American Civil War game, where it's a lot of die rolling, and 5s and 6s hit, and there were exploding dice in that one as well. So I don't think we used 8-siders. I thought it was just all 6-siders.
I can't remember. I think it was probably only 6-siders.
But you can see, same designer, he kind of used that system in this combat, and it worked well. That worked in a historical setting, and this worked in a fantasy setting.
What I'll do is I'll briefly show you the board and how some of it works and how it looks, and then we'll wrap up with a few final thoughts. So here's a look at the board, and if the sound is super whack, it's because Grant is at WBC, and so he has all the nice camera equipment, and I'm shooting this on my phone just before I leave on vacation. So basically all that to say, hopefully this is understandable and not super crazy loud with my kids upstairs, because it is summer break. So here's the board, and again, this is one of 4 potential boards, all of which are they're not geomorphic, but they all fit together in a specific way. So that's something to kind of note. But this is one board for 2 players. And so there's these entry hexes where Grant's goblins started and they were charging down the board. And then I played as the Fjordland, which are these guys. And I was kind of in some of the cities I'm trying to defend. So this was very much an attack and defense scenario. We have an off-map season display, which has a turn track and a couple of other holding boxes for income and bits and pieces like that. But you have your player board where you stack your different pieces, hold your control markers, and we have some metal coins here that we pilfered from Warfighter Fantasy. But normally you have these cardboard coins. Oh, these cardboard coins. Who knows if you can even see this? I can't see my phone screen because it's the way that the camera's kind of up above me. So hopefully you can kind of see that. It's a bit of a mess because I got a bunch of stuff here, but effectively, when a game turn happens, the bifold play aid, of which there's only 2 in the game, which you are effectively just going to go through your turn sequence. You have an income phase, an activation phase, and then kind of like the arcane study phase at the end when everyone's done. But you're going to get money if you can get money. And then there's, some of the different kingdoms have special actions that they'll do in that income phase. And then you will go and you'll do activation phases. So there's this turn track. Again, you can play with 6 players. And so here we have the goblins are the first. They're going to go and they're going to complete their turn. Then the Fjordland is going to go. They're going to complete their turn. And if you were playing more, they would all do their turns. At which point, and I do actually really like these. Because if you're playing a 6-player turn and you need to stop, you don't have to be like, oh, whose turn was it? Well, these people finished their turn and these faction hasn't gone yet. So it's kind of really obvious. But you will go, the goblins are going to do all their stuff. And once their turn is done, the Fjordlanders, they're going to do all their stuff, right? It's not that complicated of a game. And when it's your turn, you will kind of make all your guys ready. So these guys are... they're finished when they are turned, not tapped for legal reasons. You ready all your guys so they're kind of facing up, and they're facing the way that they should be, so that they can go and do their stuff. Turn them all up. Now they're all ready to go, and then you're going to then you can do kind of any of this stuff at any time that you want. So you can build new units, you activate units one at a time, and then you can kind of trigger your hero's abilities. So I have Thor over here. He has this special attack ability. Some of them can do things out of combat. So it's like, oh, you can do this kind of whenever. And then you also have a hand of kind of spells. And there's 3 different types of magic cards. So you have regular spells with this spell icon on them. You have treasures, a lot of which can be used as spells. There is this massive deck of treasures. A lot of them are spells, but not all of them. So this one's like, you gain a hero. This one's a cantrip. This one's a spell. A lot of them are spells. A lot of it's like, oh, you do this stuff. It's an endless satchel. You get more stuff. Or you have kind of the regular spells. And then those are treasures. And you also have blessings. And these are faction specific. So every faction has a deck of blessings, and it is yours and yours alone. You will have one of these in your hand, and there's most of them are spells. This is a cantrip. This is a regular spell. Some of them do things like they're strikes outside of combat, but they're all asymmetric, and they give you a lot of magic flavor. So, for example, the one that I have in my hand for the Fjordlanders is their Northern Rangers, and it's a cantrip, which is this black symbol, and it provides this, what do they call this? This is the sneak or the ambush symbol. And so it says battle magic. You play it in the battle magic phase,
Ranger army gains stealth. Oh, this is stealth, which allows you to ambush. If it occupies or is attacking a forest hex, it converts 2 white dice into black dice. So, again, that's something that only the Fjordlanders can do because they're the only ones who have these rangers. So this ranger, they have on them, as do almost all of the units, they have a gold cost of how much it costs to purchase them. They have a movement value, this is 4. These white pips tell you how many white dice they roll in combat, so that's 2 white dice in combat. And then this symbol means their range, which means they win ties, which normally you don't win. If we were to play our special blessing on these rangers, they also gain the stealth symbol, and then we convert these 2 white dice into 2 black dice if they are attacking into or out of a forest hex, I believe is what that was. So the blessings are really built for your faction. The regular spell deck, which you'll have more of these, are a bit more generic, and it'll do things like, you know, adding some more guys, adding more dice in a combat with a garrison, or if you're on the coast, you summon a kraken and it adds some dice, or you might just gain 2 blessings, which is really, really, really strong. Because your blessings are really good for your faction, things like that. But they're a bit more generic. So, on your turn, you're going to do a mixture of moving guys around, doing attacks, building guys, and that's really all you're going to be doing, right? It's not a complex game from that standpoint. So on my turn, I've got my little freeholders, they're defending this city. I might not necessarily wish to move them out of there. I've got Thor, and he's stacked with these berserkers. Normally units can't stack. The only thing that can stack are these leaders. They can stack with 1 unit. And so he's going to move. He's got 6 movement, but we're going to move 3 movement because we're going to move with our slowest unit. So most movement is 1 per hex until you get into mountains, woods, or swamps. Those are called wilderness hexes. Those cost 2. So we moved 1. And then we're going to move up here, and that's going to cost 2. It's at that. So in the way that this game works is you move and attack with a unit. That unit is then finished. Then you pick another unit. They move, then attack. Instead of doing all your moves and all your attacks. So now that we've moved, we can either attack these hobgoblins, which are pretty nasty, or this mountain troll, which is even nastier. So we'll go for the hobgoblins because we want to get them out of here. So what we're going to do is we're going to initiate a little combat. And we've got our little turn sequence that we've been following. And again, the actions here of attacking and moving and recovering, things you can do. But we have our combat resolution sequence of play, which again is really, really helpful. You can almost play entirely off of this for a good chunk of your first game ever. So, first thing, when an army or stack declares an attack action, it's resolved using the following sequence. First, we do this battle magic, and I really, really like the battle magic because it's asymmetric. It favors the attacker. So, we'll draw a couple spells for the opponent here because I don't think Grant has any. So, the first thing that we do is the attacker can cast a battle magic spell. So, there's 2 different types of spells. There are these cantrip spells, which have this black symbol, and they're usually a little weaker, or there's regular spells that don't have that cantrip symbol on them. So when it comes to combat, the attacker has the option to play a non-cantrip battle magic spell. And so I'm going to look at my hand. I have these 2, which is, those are cantrips. I have this one. Army stacked with caster doubles the number of white dice in its combat rating. So I'm going to play that. It has this star symbol. I have a star symbol matching my mage. If you don't have a mage, you can't cast magic. And so I'm going to play that. That's my battle magic. Now, in response, the defender can play a cantrip. They cannot play a regular magic card. So they have this really cool magic card, can't use it. They can only use one of their 2 cantrips if they choose. And so they could cast this, but, you know, it's attacking with a 1 die, kind of a free 1-shot. You could try that. Or they could do this. Target unit, monster or garrison, reduces its combat rating by 1 black die. So this is a range 2. We have a mage within range 2, so he's going to cast that onto these guys. Well, I guess he casts it onto them. So we'll play one of those, and we'll kind of see what that looks like. So they're done, and then in response, the attacker can then play a cantrip. And so the attacker has the option to play 2 spells, one of which is really strong. The defender only has the option to play a cantrip. And how you go about doing that, when to pick your battles and that is really fun. It's really interesting. There's a lot to consider in that. So I think what we're gonna do, we could do this. Player that just cast a spell must discard another spell at random. Sure, why not? We'll do it. It's fun. We'll just play that. Boop. So we're gonna play that. And so the opponent has these 2 spells. Well, they got to get rid of one. And so that's a tough choice, honestly. Let's get rid of this one. So, the spell's just like, it's gaining stuff, it's losing stuff, it's kind of screwing your opponents over. It's fun. So, what we ended up with is the Berserker has their white dice doubled, so they have 4 white dice. And they would have had 2 black dice, but the opponent's cantrip reduced that by 1. So this is the attacking dice. So when we talk about it being a little bit of a bucket of dice, this is what we're talking about. Now, the defender has 2 white dice and 1 black die. However, they're also in the mountain. If you're in mountain, you get a white defensive die as well for defensive terrain, right? Still a war game. And then we're just going to roll, and you hit on 5s and 6s. So we'll roll the attacking dice. And I rolled a 6 and a 5. Perfect. So I rolled 2 hits. And then we'll roll the defensive dice. And they rolled really well as well. They rolled a 5 and a 6. So in this instance, this would be a tie, and nothing would happen. We would just be finished, and it would kind of be done like that. We would be done. Remember, if we had this ranged symbol, I would win that tie and inflict a hit on this hobgoblin, and the hobgoblin is already reduced. So this is the clean side. The reduced side has this kind of red mark on the side, and it would die and I would win. However, it was a tie, so that's not a big deal. So it's just kind of a tie, and we're done. But the nice thing about this D8 is, if you ever roll a 7 or an 8, that is considered a crit. So this counts as a hit, but in addition to all of my combat dice, I roll an additional attack. And, that's another miss, but if you roll a 5 or a 6 on that additional hit, that counts. So if you're rolling lots of black dice, for example, this mountain troll has 3 black dice on there. If you can get lucky, wow, those are all misses. That's not what you want to do. If you can get lucky and roll a hit with a crit, and then you go again, you can roll yourself into a lot of successes that way, and you can really punish opponents. Again, it's a light game, and so it's fun. Sometimes your guy gets wiped. It's not that serious. But that's the crux of this game, right? You are moving guys, attacking with guys. You're trying to hold on to your cities. You're trying to take other people's cities. You just move on your little guys. There's an economy aspect to it. You get money for how many fortresses or for how many kind of settlements that you control. The goblins do not. They have their own special economy. When they move into a settlement, that's not a settlement. Where's a settlement? They've already raised and looted them all. Oh, here, we'll go with High Garden. They technically controlled it. So when you move into a settlement, everyone would loot it, but they loot it for double value. I think they loot it for... No, cities are double value. So they loot it and get 3 gold. So they don't have a tracked income. Goblins aren't the best economists. They just pillage the place, they control it, and get money, which they can spend to buy troops immediately. However, at the beginning of every turn, they have to pay 1 gold for every city that they control. And if they can't or don't want to do that, they will just raise them, at which point they're useless, they don't provide anything to anyone. But if you lose all of your cities because you run out of money, your civilization collapses, and you'll lose. So the orcs function the same way. They have a really unique. Sorry, I just realized you just look at the back of my head the whole time. They have a very unique economy in this. But yeah, it's a light game. You're messing around. Then at the end of the turn, once everyone's passed, you resolve these. What are these? Magic study markers, and effectively these will either have a glyph or a churn on them. And if they have a glyph, you can refill your spells, you can refill your treasures that you played, you can refill or replace your blessing that you have. If you get a churn, you can do one of those things. And in a 2-player game, it is a 1 in 3 chance that you'll have that, basically. So it's quite likely. I think those odds are probably similar with more players. We can play with 4, and it was happening to like 1 or 2 of the players each round. So, but so you kind of have to be a bit more careful about those. There's no guarantee you get all your stuff back. But it's a light game. It moves pacey, especially with 2 players. Move guys, attack guys, move guys, attack guys, move guys, attack guys, and then it kind of it'll snowball and you'll lose, or you'll like cling on to the end and you've won. That's the joy of the game, is that it's light enough. Like, the rules are so simple. I move some hexes and I do some attacks with some dice after a little bit of spell card play. Well, guess what? Your hand limit for spells is 3. Your hand limit for blessings is 1. So you're gonna either know exactly what you can and can't do with those, so it doesn't bog you down. There's a couple points in a turn you'll be like, okay, this is the important one. I got to kind of commit everything. But you might have stuff that's kind of niche, and you're like, cool. So the combats move really quickly because you're like, I don't commit, I don't have to do anything extra, and you just roll the dice and you're kind of done with it. I really love what we've got going on here, but hopefully this was legible with my phone. But what we'll do is I'll wrap up here with a few final thoughts.
So that was a look at the map. I had a wonderful time playing this.
Always.
I had a good time. The first time we played it, I was like, it was good, but I wanted more, because we kind of like clawed our way through the rule book, which and we also great.
Well, and we also didn't do a full game. If I remember correctly, we played a couple of like an hour and a half, and it was very late.
Yeah, we were tired as well.
And I think we decided to scrap it with our appetite whetted, yes. Right?
But it was whetted very much where I'm like, I desperately wanted to play this again. Like, we played our friend's copy. You have a copy. I that night went and bought my own copy. Yeah. That's how much I was like, yeah, I really want to do this, and I'm so glad that I did. This is a keeper for me.
Well, and it's one of those games that I think you're going to get a lot of replay out of this, because the different factions, the different campaigns, the different focuses, and the way the cards work, it's just going to be so replayable.
And you'll be able to play this with way more of your friends than you were ever going to play that World War I operational game you've got sat on your shelf.
And there's nothing wrong with that World War I operational game.
But you only have one friend you're going to play that with.
This you're going to play with 4 to 5 friends.
Yeah, you can play this with more people, more different times. You'll get your money's worth out of it if that's what you're looking to try to do. I
really hope that Chris and Compass, they do something else, either to expand upon this or go in a different direction, but use some of the system. I just think it works really well. It would be fun to see this kind of grow.
Yes, I or doing a sequel or an expansion.
Right. Maybe with some new factions or a new board. I would buy it. I mean, I bought this.
Without question. And I feel like this was... it sold out, right?
Oh, yeah.
I feel like this was a success for them, so I hope that they're incentivized to do more.
And it's like $100 and some odd game because it's really nicely made.
Yes.
So you're not going to get this for $60, right? You're going to spend a pretty penny to get this.
But you'll see where the money went.
Oh, yeah. It's very easy to see why it costs so much.
Well worth it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was my only real struggle, is the way they've laid the rules out with the basic game stuff. And it's kind of chronological in there.
Yeah.
And then they've got the advanced game stuff. And it's like, there's a bit of flipping back and forth that first time you're kind of learning it. And the way that some of the combat section of the rules is laid out is like, here's this stuff. And then I felt like some of it wasn't in the best order to learn that.
Yeah.
But... I don't need to look at the rules anymore.
No, and I would say this is a very good player aid.
everything is on there pretty much.
I think it has, it references the rules so you can quickly go and read that.
Thank goodness. I love a play that does that.
Agreed. I do wish, like for instance, some of the special abilities on the units aren't on this player aid. And I don't know why that is.
Yeah.
They're in the rules.
And then kind of 3 or 4 pages in the front of the rules.
Yeah, it's just, to me, that would have been something I would have wanted to put on here. But just for quick reference, right? Because there's a lot of symbology.
Also, you've got 2 player aids. This can do 6 players.
It should have 6.
Print more.
Player
You're going to
aids,
do that.
yeah.
But yeah, I think the rule book is kind of really big. But the actual rules that you play don't need to be that big. It's really easy to do once you do it. I can teach you how to play this in about 10 or 15 minutes.
Yep.
And the rule book, don't let it scare you.
Yeah,
that was the only kind of detractor that it might have. I'm like, don't let it scare you off. It doesn't need to be as big as it is. It happens to be that big, unfortunately.
Well, really, I think the play aid should be studied more than the rule book immediately, and then you can just reference the parts on the play aid.
That's a decent way to do it.
But you're going to have to do some trial and error on this. I remember our first game, it was like, oh, that's what that means. And now we're like, oh, okay, it's intuitive now, and I get it. We don't make those
but
mistakes.
It's one of those things where you're reading this section of the rule book, but then kind of something in a couple pages will reference that or have a stipulation. Whoopsies. And that was a little bit frustrating. But once you get it, it's really, really easy to play.
Yeah.
And I could play this with literally anyone. Even with the basic rules, I could play this probably with my 10-year-old son. No big deal.
No doubt.
And then the second time, I would play with the spells.
Yep, agreed. Spells are really good.
Yeah,
as are the magic
That's
items.
what we're all in it for.
Yeah, the treasure and the layers are really good. I love that they regenerate. It's like more people move in and take over the...
Yeah, every year the layers kind of...
which
they got
is
more monsters
nice. And that's key for the goblins and the orcs because you got to get money.
Yeah.
And that is ultimately, I played the orcs and the goblins now, and I have burned myself out both times economically.
Yeah, they have a very unique economic system, and I want to watch someone do it.
Who knows what they're doing.
Or has a good ally who doesn't just die immediately and can't help them.
Sure.
Welcome to our
Because I
first
think
game.
in our game, had you been around, I think we would have done a little better.
Because because that game was so interesting because you had done everything you needed to do because we needed 10 control markers.
Between us.
You had 5 and I died.
Yeah.
So if I had got my 5, we would have won.
Oh, yeah.
But you couldn't hold on long enough for me to get myself back into it to even attempt to help.
Yeah.
It was such an interesting dynamic.
Very interesting.
But yeah, very unique. Really, really enjoyed this. I highly recommend this.
Well, and like we referenced earlier, there is a second printing, and I believe that second printing, as of the end of July, when we're recording this, is available again for purchase.
Yeah.
So people are going to want to jump on this as soon as they can.
The other thing that I have is we're using the Cube for Me organization set.
Very nice.
And effectively, it is just a bunch of card boxes.
Yep.
And so the faction stuff. Here, let me just pull this out. Everything fits in the box really well. But even the faction pieces, so these are the other factions, they go into these card boxes perfectly, and it's all the different pieces, and all the cards go in here with all the boards. So
very nicely organized.
Yeah, that's a very good solution because otherwise, the box is kind of tight with space, and you'll just have a bunch of baggies, which is fine. But to have it nice and organized in there, and then you just pull out the trays that you want, and you can keep them organized on the board or next to the board as well.
Well, these ultimately double as containers, right?
Yeah.
You're just going to open that and put it out and pull the coins out of this.
Yeah, so you don't have a
box.
big mess, makes clean up, pack away easy. So that's just an extra tidbit. That's cubeforme.com. It's a Polish company. They ship to the US.
Very affordable,
The
too.
shipping is almost the same price, if not cheaper, than USPS.
Which is crazy to
And
me.
it takes a week and a half to 2 weeks to ship.
Yeah.
It's extremely good service considering. Yeah, I have a harder time getting stuff from my family in the UK. Like, it's crazy.
No doubt.
So, Burning Banners from Compass. You got to check this out. It's a wonderful time. You're going to have a great time with it. Big thumbs up from me. Appreciate you very much for tuning in. I've been Alexander for theplayersaid.com.
And I'm Grant.